Hey, welcome back to Twitch and Box Sports Talk. It's LSV for life here at the Backstage Pass. Of course, we do have Box, Twitch is two boys, Finn and Owen. We're going to break down this first round of the playoffs for Wild Card Weekend, talk a little bit about what to expect in the divisional games. I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit about the fall of a few coaches and some teams that aren't moving on. So not to spoil everybody's fun, but always like to start off with our segment of the week called What Made You Twitch? So pass it over to you there, Box. Anything stand out this week?
Yeah, there's obviously a couple items, but the one I want to hit on for sure is the AJ Brown, Nick Sirianni altercation on the sideline. I think I talked about this. I know I've talked about it at least one time this year, if not more. But AJ Brown's always complaining about not getting targets and catches and all that. And then this week, I think it was two key third downs. At least two key third downs that I remember that, he obviously called for the ball, and then he dropped it. The one hit him in the hands, and then the one he tried to one-hand catch it, and he bounced off his hand. But AJ and then Nick Sirianni, you're in a playoff game. I think they were down by 3 at the time. So they're obviously still in the game, and this is before halftime. And Nick Sirianni goes over and starts yelling at him, and they get in a not really a physical altercation, but they're pushing and shoving and yelling at each other. And I think that moment right there chalks up what AJ Brown and Nick Sirianni relationship has been so far up to this point. Last week or 2 weeks ago when they beat Buffalo, they were walking back and Nick Sirianni was talking shit and AJ Brown was just shaking his head at him. So I think it just goes to show that it's probably the last we see AJ Brown in Philadelphia. I don't see why he'd come back with all altercation, but a part of that made me twitch was you're still in a game, you're still in a playoff game, you're at home, and what does that show to the rest of the team if your head coach is trying to, get on your number one wide receiver? I understand hard coaching and stuff, but don't do it on the sideline when you're down 3 after a big play. Your defense has been bailing you out all game against the 49ers. So it made me twitch. I was like, there's obviously better ways to handle that, and I get like high intensity, high emotional situations like that, but you can't. Nick Sirianni obviously knew AJ Brown was going to react that way, and what does that show to the rest of the team if the head coach is more worried about yelling at the wide receiver one than trying to figure out how to get the ball back or how to end up beating the 49ers? But that was me. That made me twitch. Made me go, that's not the way you probably should go about that. But I'm gonna throw it over to Twitch. Twitch, what made you twitch from this week, Wild Card Weekend?
Well, there's a couple thing honorable mentions. Obviously, Pittsburgh pissing the bed, and also like if you're the Packers fan, just a giant collapse there. It's tough. Other than the last 2 games of the weekend, the other 4 games all coming down within a game-winning score within the last 3 minutes. First time in NFL history. So, some great games. So there's a lot of ways you could go with this. But I'm going to actually go with a point we touched on earlier this year, but the number of missed field goal and extra points that were missed this week. I don't have the final tally, but I know that there was a field goal missed in the Rams-Panthers, the Bears-Packers. I know the Packers kicker missed 1. Extra point missed in the Jags, Bills, I believe. Or maybe, no, it was a field goal. It was a little missing the field goal right before halftime. Eagles missing an extra point attempt. So just a lot of missed kicks this week, and with especially on ones that should be gimme points and games that were for at least 4 of the 6 were all close games. So for most of the teams, it didn't come back to bite them after all. But that was just something. Maybe something too small. You probably go several different directions with that. But the chip shot field goals and extra points being missed.
Definitely a bunch of them. Throughout the year, as I said, that's been a topic that's come up on more than one occasion, as it's been the topic that's made people twitch. Yeah. Mine, I guess, is I'm gonna put this on Herbert specifically. Sometimes I speak in generics, which I'll do with I think my defensive player of the week. But what made me twitch is here it is. He sat out last week. I'm not saying he shouldn't have sat out because he's obviously got a significant injury in his hand. But you sit out, you come back, and then you put up just horrible numbers. I think it was 19 for 31 with 159 yards passing. Can't find the end zone because you're 16-3 is what you lost to the Patriots. And that's always comes down to, I think, a question of you get in that situation, and they weren't losing anything by sitting their players out, But sometimes the downfall of sitting your players out is they get cold. And I don't know if that's necessarily what happened. But for a team that, when I start talking about some of the other games this week, relying on the bread and butter that gets you there, I think this is where you have to play to that next level, but you can't forget what got you to the dance, and they just look horrible. So we'll see what the Patriots are like this next weekend. But, yep, good for you, Herbert.
Yeah.
Another year you get there and want it out.
At least your girlfriend's hot.
There you go.
But I'm going to roll into our offensive and defensive players of the week. Lots of good choices on both sides of the ball. I'm going to go with Jordan Love, though. Obviously took the loss. Wasn't on him. That defense finally let him down. Caleb Williams also made some great plays. But Jordan Love went 24 of 46 for 323 yards and 4 touchdowns. Only took 1 sack. You can't ask more out of a quarterback in a playoff game, especially in Soldier Field, the divisional game. That's the kind of stat line you want your quarterback to have in the playoffs. But to be outdone by the defense, and there's nothing really Jordan Love. Most of the time you can look back and say, oh, you could have done this play different or this play different. But from what I watched in that game, Jordan Love played about. He missed some throws, but with Christian Watson, the speed guy, going down, and Matthew Golden he 84 yards and a touchdown, but missing a couple of deep balls. Just it's kind of game you want your quarterback to have, and still losing to the Bears. It sucks to happen. But I think Jordan Love deserves more respect on his name now, because before the season he was unproven. Last time they played in the playoffs, he kind of laid an egg. It was iffy, but I think after that performance, I don't think the moment is too big for him. I think it's it's the way the cookie crumbles. But Jordan Love definitely, I think, put himself in that top 10 quarterback conversation with that. But also, we've seen him play all year with the best worst offense in the league, the best worst team in the league. So, but
Packers fans definitely showed up yesterday to work with their hearts broke.
Yeah, I bet it was. But Twitch, throwing it over to you. Who is your offensive player of the week?
Yeah, you kind of touched on some of them. Like it's like a couple honorable mentions. You said, you talk about Caleb Williams in the comeback. Had 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, but I think it was about 370 yards passing. I don't have it right in front of me, but something like that. Romeo Doubs and that Jordan Love had 8 of those catches for $124 and a touchdown. And Puka Nacua, which gets me to my player of the week. It's Puka Nacua having 11 catches again, or 10 catches for $111 and a touchdown. And on top of numerous big catches on that final drive, the Rams got the game-winning touchdown with about 30 seconds left or whatever it was. But my player of the week was Matthew Stafford. So we talked about, sorry, I'm kind of going back to the honorable mentions, but talking about Trevor Lawrence and you can mention Caleb Williams, you mentioned Josh Allen for the same type of things of your team. That's why you have this, as cliche as it sounds, it's an NFL, there's a quarterback-driven league, and especially in these moments, this goes to show the importance of having a good one. And so, like I said, you could also mention, even though they lost, Trevor Lawrence, Josh Allen, Caleb Williams. But Matthew Stafford, after the Panthers beating the Rams last month, it wasn't always pretty for the Rams win. They went up 14-0, and then Carolina kept hanging around, score kept going back and forth. And then they blocked the punt to set up the eventual touchdown, a great pass by Young. And so, then for the Rams to have about 3 minutes, and then Matthew Stafford just finding his guys, finding Adams, finding guys that only made their second and third catch of the year, finding the open guy, and just marching down the field with confidence. I said that's the veteran presence of Matthew Stafford. So I said he was 24 of 42 for 304, 3 touchdowns. He did have a pick. But I said there's a number of guys you could put there. So, but I went with Stafford because he had the best statistics of any of those other game-winning quarterbacks, and I feel like you put him or Josh Allen or Caleb Williams, you take those off. None of those guys are moving to the second round. So, but by default, I went with Stafford.
Well, and I hear what you say about being a quarterback-driven league, and I actually agree. I think that you have those guys that step in those moments. They deserve that recognition. For me, watching all of the games in bits and pieces, if I didn't catch them first go around, it's nice to be able to go back there and watch them with the NFL ticket and recap an entire game in about 30, 40 minutes. So, I guess my overall assessment comes back to, we saw CMC holding down the fort for the 49ers pretty much the whole entire year, not afraid to put the game on his back. When Purdy's out, he was still your go-to guy. And although Purdy's looked pretty sexy over the last month. I mean, I think he's had a couple really big games with, I don't know, 4 or 5 touchdowns. So played well in those big moments. But at the end of the day, you can't put that back on your quarterback every time to be that guy. So I feel like that's where you got to have a Puka or somebody else that comes in there and help you get a running game started to open that up. Because when we look at statistically where the Chargers ended up with 200 yards, I don't know what the Steelers ended up with, but it didn't seem like it was more than 200 yards. And so you look at, if you got a guy like CMC that can get you 110, 120, that's not necessarily the great stat line that you're looking for, but it does produce 2 of your touchdowns in situations where you need points on the boards and other teams couldn't figure out how to get that done with their star players. So I'll give my shout out to CMC in a week where it's easy to throw up 4 or 5 quarterbacks' names. So does that want to roll into defensive player of the week?
Yep.
Just circle back around the horn.
Back to defense, or 2 defensive player of the week. My defensive player of the week, Eric Kendricks, kind of a throwback name there. 10 total tackles, 7 solos, 2 tackles for loss, 1 pass defended. And there was guys with better defensive stat lines this week for sure. But Eric Kendricks has been a guy. He's had 100 tackles in his career every season that he's played, except for 2, and that was his rookie year, and he had 72. He wasn't the main middle linebacker, but the guy that's had 100 tackles for, I was trying to look how many years he's played. It's been over 10 years, but he's a long-time Vikings player, and then played for the Chargers, played for Dallas last year. But Eric Kendricks coming in, he got signed mid-December, and now he's not the captain, but he's the one calling the play. He's calling the defense for Robert Saleh. So I feel like he deserved a shout-out for getting in there, being a guy, you've only been with the team for a little over a month now, and you're calling the defense and making big impact on the game. And it just shows the relentlessness of that 49ers defense of, you're missing so many studs, you're missing all these guys, and you're still getting it done against an Eagles team that has weapons everywhere. Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, you have Saquon Barkley, and, no matter how Saquon's year went, we still saw it's still Saquon Barkley at the end of the day. We see still a freak athlete. So Eric Kendricks, my defensive player of the week, coming in basically off the couch and having a great impact on this 49ers playoff run here.
I'm going with defense. I've been all over, and I'm sorry, Houston, that I bet against you last week. I'm on my own team, but I'm going within there's a number of players you could pick from that dominant performance last night. Just in excuse me, a offensive-driven league and era. It's a defense that can single-handedly. It's in a night where, and we'll get to that, I guess, more in the game breakdown. But we're a night where the Texans turn the ball over 3 times and only allow 3 points off those turnovers. But a big reason for that was, they have 2, and it was still a tight game, even though Pittsburgh wasn't doing anything. With 11 minutes left, it was still only 10-6, and just like that, it went 30-6, and that's because of 2 defensive touchdowns. But I'm going to go with co-defensive players of the week. Just again goes back to they came in the game with 29 sacks total this year, and between Daniel Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. You look at the sack before Pittsburgh's last field goal before halftime, when they got the big turnover on the red zone on that side of the field. When you look at the fumble, scoop and score, who was the one that caused the fumble, which would have been his second sack of the night, was Will Anderson. And then who got pressure on the last interception for the pick 6 was Hunter and Anderson. So it's just those guys were completely taking over the game as the Houston Texans defense in general. So I feel like I had to give it to somebody. But that just those 2 guys are just awesome. I mean, it's with all due respect to the Seahawks, to the Rams, to the Broncos, Houston's just got by far the number 1 defense and probably the best 1-2 combo. I know you said Benito and some of those guys that can give them a run for their money. I said, but I've watched more Houston Texans games than I think I've had even when J.J. Watt played this year. I've watched a lot of Texans football. The reason why they've won 13 out of 15, gone 13-2 down the stretch after starting off 0-3, is because every single week, watching the Texans game, watching how they closed out the Jaguars with a fumble strip sack, and how they shut down Josh Allen and constantly. Last night was I don't want to get too much into the game breakdown, but it was the same. Anyway, long story short, it was the same thing. It's the same 2 players watching those games. They jump off the tape, and that was my defensive players of the week. Daniel Hunter also had a sack as well. So I think it was 2.5 sacks and two forced turnovers caused by those guys. And I know Hunter had 3 QB hits, or maybe it was Singletary, or maybe it was Anderson. Anyway, those 2 guys got it done, and all night never let Aaron Rodgers get comfortable.
Well, that's who I had actually written down was, I look for players specifically, but then overall defensive performance. So it's hard not to recognize Houston, but since you've been riding their nuts all year, I'll roll with something different at the last minute. Because that was pretty outstanding, because that's what got my attention was fourth quarter fumble return and a pick six to just put the final nails in the coffin. So if, you look back to the thing that made me twitch this week with Herbert's poor offensive stats, some that you have to go back and look at. Defensively, the Patriots had 6 sacks, 11 QB hits. They held him to less than 200 yards. So it was one of the other crazy pointers that came up there was, that's 3 points was a season low and a franchise playoff low. So I don't know that we always talk as much about the Patriots defense because I don't know that they've necessarily been tested with their schedule to the same degree as some of the other people that we talk about. But we're going to have that opportunity here this week. So we'll give out some props to the Patriots defense. Vrabel coming in and doing Vrabel things. So, all right. Good takes.
So this week, knock on wood, there was there was a couple injuries, but George Kittle tore his Achilles, so out for the year, probably be back mid next season if he's lucky, if everything goes well. George Kittle seems like he has great podcast I've listened to and he's been on, and seems like a good dude genuinely, so hope he has a speedy recovery. And then Christian Kirk out for the season as well. The Bills' kind of deep threat guy for what it's worth. He's not really.
Oh, Gabe Davis.
Gabe Davis.
Yeah.
Not who'd I say?
Kirk for the Texans.
Oh, yeah. Gabe Davis out. Was the deep threat guy. He's kind of been just a role player this year. So Josh Allen down with another weapon.
Yeah.
But besides that, there was nothing too crazy that happened. At least for teams that are still going to be playing this week. So we're going to roll into some recaps. We're going to start off with the Rams-Panthers game. Crazy back and forth game. The Rams tried to lose it, but then they pulled it out in the end. The final score of that one being 31-34. The Rams got it done. Bryce Young, it's not loaded. Bryce Young played a great game. Definitely bought himself. Proved that last year him getting benched was just a maturity thing, and kind of grown into a NFL caliber starter now. Get some more help. But Bryce Young, 21 of 40, 264 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Chuba Hubbard, 13 carries for 46 yards and 2 touchdowns, with Bryce Young for another 24 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Jalen Crocker, 134 yards and a touchdown. Kind of a guy that's been playing that wide receiver 2 role all year, having a great game. And then rookie receiver McMillan, 81 yards. A couple great big-time plays. He averaged 16.2 yards a catch, so he's a big play guy. Panthers, and on the Rams side, Matt Stafford, 304, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Took 1 sack in there. Kyron Williams, 57 yards on the ground with Blake Corum, another 45. Puka Nacua took a jet sweep for 14 yards and a touchdown. And then Puka Nacua also leading the team in receiving yards with 111 and a touchdown, with Devontae Adams coming back off an injury with 72 receiving yards. So the Panthers gave him run for their money. There was moments that I was like, oh shit, the Panthers are gonna pull the upset off here. And I don't know if that's the Rams traveling across the country basically, or what. And the Rams also had a lot of uncharacteristic penalties. They had 9 penalties, and usually they're one of the least penalized teams in the league. So another reason I thought it was like, oh crap, they're gonna lose. But the Rams defense really stood up in the end and pulled it out there, even though with the missed field goal, when the Rams missed that field goal, I was like, oh crap, that's going to be the reason the Rams lost. They're going to lose by 2, and it's going to be like, oh, well, this guy bangs that field goal, they win. Yeah. But they ended up pulling it out. Matt Stafford continues his run. I think the Panthers, granted it's the NFC South, and anything can happen in the NFC South, obviously. We saw that when 3 teams finished for first, or tied for first, and the Panthers had the tiebreaker, 8-9. But it'll be interesting to see where the Panthers end up next year. And interested to see how the Rams grow. Devontae Adams had a couple uncharacteristic penalties too, but, coming back off an injury. It happens. So that's really all I got. The Rams ended up pulling it out, even though it looked like they were going to lose.
Yeah. No, I mean, it looked like it was going to be a blowout early. That the Rams, after getting surprised by Carolina last week, jumping out to an early 14-0 lead. But then I thought, I was kind of in the middle with Bryce Young, and so obviously they had parts where they beat the Rams this year and beat some other good teams. So he's had his moments, but I wanted to see him on this stage, and he doesn't. I mean, like Chuba Hubbard, like you said, like Coker or whatever. As I said, like they've got some nice pieces, but like nothing solid. So it's like for them to. Up until 4 weeks ago, the Rams were the Super Bowl favorite. For Carolina to play them the way they did the first time and then come out and respond being down 14-0 and coming back eventually taking the lead. They settled in the second quarter, made it 14-7, and then made it 17-14 at the half. And so and then holding the Rams to a 3-and-out, and the next thing you know, after the Panthers' first drive the second half, it was 17-all, and then it was just a back and forth game. So kudos to them, and then getting the block punt with whatever that was between 4 and 5 minutes left. But the difference, obviously, in the game to me was Matthew Stafford on that stage, and like you said, getting the ball to his playmakers. Like you said, getting Adams the ball reacclimated on that final drive. You saw him go to both pieces. Like he knew when it was big third downs and the game on the line, who was number one was Puka Nacua, rightfully so. It was that was obviously. I feel like we've already had him as Player of the Week a couple times this week, but I feel like that was the other one that was almost a gimme this week for Player of the Week, having 2 touchdowns total and 125 yards with 11 catches. But goes to show which he might, as you can, Nelson Smith and the Jigba and some other guys can make an argument. But over the last 2 years, Puka Nacua is as good as productive as any wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I said for Carolina, saw some good things. I said, but for the Rams, I said with the game on the line, you prefer not to be done. It looked like you kind of touched on it. It looked like after early season troubles like that Philadelphia loss for the Rams and stuff like that, it was between the missed field goal and the block kick, it's a special team's going to be the reason why. And even the Niners game, when botching I think it was a punt earlier this year. So it's a special team's going to be the reason why the Rams are sitting on the couch. I said, but Stafford responding the way big players do on big moments, and again, it ended up being the highest scoring game of the week, and what a great way to start off the weekend of football with that game.
Who would have thought that was going to be the highest scoring game of the week as well?
Yeah.
But rolling into the next game here, this is the game that I was most excited to watch. Sat down and watched most of it. The Chicago Bears beat the Green Bay Packers 31-27. Jordan Love 4 touchdown passes. Josh Jacobs on the ground 55 yards. And then Romeo Doubs stepping up again, a guy that's been stepping up big time, kind of proving himself as that wide receiver one when Christian Watson gets down. But 124 yards and a touchdown with rookie Matthew Golden, 84 yards and a touchdown. Jalen Reed, 43 yards and a touchdown. And then Christian Watson, 36 yards and a touchdown, getting hurt on that touchdown reception. But on the Bears side of things, Caleb Williams, 2 for 2, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 361 yards. DeAndre Swift, 54 yards and a touchdown with I still can't say his name, 27 yards, the rookie running back. And then Colston Loveland, the rookie tight end, leading the team in receiving yards with 137, with DJ Moore kind of stepping up with Roma Dunze and Luther Burden kind of being banged up recently, 64 yards and a touchdown. But great game by the Bears. Defensively, you could see just playing with enthusiasm. This is their chance to not really necessarily knock the little brother tag off, because I feel like it's going to take a couple more years of the Bears beating the Packers more consistently, that it's going to no longer be the Bears of the little brother. But I said it. I don't really have too much to say. I already gave my Jordan Love speech about how I thought he's now a top 10 quarterback after that performance. But Caleb Williams, again, shows moments of greatness and grow moments of, first overall pick, this guy's a dude, and then moments of, oh, God, this guy's playing like he was last year. One of those interceptions was one of those plays you're like, why are you putting that ball in that situation when there's easily a check down? And I know it's not the big player, the big throw, but still, the Bears get it done. Interesting to see how this next game shakes out when they play the Rams this week. The Rams are rolling up there, so excited for that game for sure. But Bears get it done and knock the best worst team out of the playoffs.
Right. Well, I feel like it was a completely different. The Packers losing the last 4 games of the year.
Yeah,
and
Michael Parsons.
Yeah, losing Parsons. What's his name? Frank or not Frank? They didn't put up Frank's. Kraft.
Yeah,
That tight
Tucker
end,
Kraft.
like,
Yeah, because
losing-
Tucker Kraft was on a MVP type level there for a
Yeah,
while.
so like Green Bay still has some pieces. Are they going to pay Dobbs in the offseason, stuff like that? Like you said, I feel like he showed that he could be a number 1, and very similar to like other Packers games, like Denver, and those comes to mind. The Lions on Thanksgiving, even though they ended up winning that game, but just like where Jordan Love the first half just looks absolutely lights out. And like you said, I mean, to me, that was more. I want to blame the Packers because of the way they played the last month and like not having the places to get the pressure without. But I mean, Parsons was out; he was injured, and so like, how do you let the Bears kind of hang around? Because it's whatever it was, 24-9 or whatever. It looked like it was over. I myself included, I turned away from the game for a little bit and came back to it, and I was like, holy shit, Chicago might actually come back.
Yeah.
But to me, this game was more about Chicago in a year where Chicago had things go their way. They won the division. They got a little bit of luck, but they have that miraculous win against, like I said last week, kind of their big brother in the Packers, who have won all the big game moments at least over the last 20 or 30 years, and like having that win right before Christmas, the way they did in that overtime game. Now they had a chance to beat them. And like I said, being down that much going into the fourth quarter, and like you kind of touched on it with Caleb Williams, so like against lesser opponents, but he kind of did the same thing against us in Pittsburgh. With Bears playing Pittsburgh earlier this year, he kind of did the same thing with I think it was the Bears and the Jets and the Commanders, or maybe it was the Bengals. I think it was the Command because they would have played the Bengals anyway. Yeah. But point being, there was a couple games where they played lesser opponents, but it came down to Caleb Williams where early in the game he misses the. You question his accuracy. He's got all the arm strength in the world. He's got a cannon and the athleticism, but some of the boneheaded decision making, or like missing some of the easy gimme throws. But then what I'm getting at is with the game on the line, with their season on the line, Caleb Williams he was making all the hard, tough throws. And so like that's what I took from the game was, again, it seems like Caleb Williams is taking that step. He may still have those young mistakes and carelessness. I said, but even the San Francisco game that they ended up losing, I felt like he responded and showed up that San Francisco Sunday night game a couple of weeks ago. And so to me, I said it would be easy to put this on the Packers and choking, but I give this more to Chicago and like carrying that momentum. It just sometimes I don't know how much people make if they make too much of it. I said, but sometimes, like I said, it is just luck and storybook. Is this a thing for, like, you could say the same thing for Denver, you could say the same thing for Chicago, like all these close wins in dramatic ways. Is there something special? Just the fact that Chicago's relevant. What a great sports city. Like I said, what a great win if you're a Chicago fan to just be, for lack of a better term, pretty much dominated by Green Bay for the last, like I said, 20 to 30 years. You get them in the first round of the playoffs. You won the division this year. You had a dramatic win. You're down big in the fourth quarter. How's your young quarterback respond for the first time in the playoffs? And like I said, for all the erratic throws in the first half, when the game came on the line, just like he'd done most of the year, Williams was on the money, on the harder throws, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see this next round matchup between the Rams and Bears. So,
yeah, most definitely. Rolling into the first noon game, we had the Bills and Jags. The Bills get the win over the Jacksonville Jaguars, 27-24. Jags went down and went ahead, 4 minutes left, and then what I've been saying all year, Josh Allen did Josh Allen things and went down and scored with about a minute left, and that defense got to stop there late. But Trevor Lawrence, 18 of 30, 270 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Travis Etienne, 67 yards on the ground. And then Parker Washington, young receiver that really just came on late there, 107 yards and a touchdown with Travis Etienne, 49 yards and a touchdown. And then Brian Thomas Jr., guy who really struggled with his sophomore slump at receiver there, 21 yards and a touchdown. On the Bills side of things, Josh Allen, 28 of 35 for 273 yards and a touchdown. James Cook on the ground, 46 yards. Josh Allen, 33 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Shakir stepping up, 82 yards, with Brandon Cooks with another 58. This game, big-time defensive game by the Jags, really kind of keeping it close, giving Trevor Lawrence opportunities, but 2 interceptions by the Bills defense, who's been kind of lackluster all year. You know, they've been in games, they've won games, but when the moment got big, Bills responded in a big way and kind of shut down that Trevor Lawrence and kind of stopped the momentum the Jags kind of had rolling into the playoffs. I feel like the Jags were most definitely one of the hottest teams rolling into the playoffs. Here on that win streak, knocking the Broncos off, and then beating the Colts again, which that is what it is. But
Yeah.
I mean, just playing outstanding football, and then you run into Josh Allen, and is what it is. Josh Allen got it done with 2 on the ground, 1 through the air, and I mean, by committee for receivers worked up to this point. Be interesting to see how it shakes out this week in Denver for sure, but. Jacksonville is another team to be on the lookout for next year. They're only going to get better. They're going to get Travis Hunter back. They're going to add more pieces. This wasn't like some of those older teams, kind of like the Rams. When the Rams don't win it all this year, it's kind of going to be a blow up and rebuild. Not necessarily rebuild, but it's going to be you have some real soul searching to do where you want to go in certain positions. But the Jaguars is a young team, first year coach in Lincoln. I think Jags will be maybe not perennial, but they'll be back. I think they make the playoffs again next year, and I think they're going to be in the conversation for contenders instead of being under the radar until mid-season like they were this year.
I feel like they're better set up than they were 2 or 3 years ago when they lost a close game and were competitive against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I feel like they're a lot better set up now with all this cap space and this first year head coach. You and I picked this game as our game of the week last week, and I feel like it lived up to the billing. I mean, all the way through, it was 10-7 before half, and Little, who just set the NFL record for longest kick by far last week, misses a 47-yarder, 44-yarder before half. But to me, like, 2 things I want to take away from this. I'll start on the losing side. Was a couple of different things with Jacksonville. I don't know why, with the kind of game that ETN was having, why they didn't try to slow the game down more with ETN. And giving Josh Allen those opportunities and more time. I thought that Trevor Lawrence played outstanding. That for the last touchdown pass that put him up, originally 27-21, the little floater. But I'm talking about the first 2 touchdowns that Lawrence threw on the inside of the end zone. Just were absolute bullets. Were only his high and up, so where only his guy could get it. And so I thought Trevor Lawrence played outstanding. I said, but it was just one of those things where. Same thing. I wish I picked Jacksonville last week because they were the hottest team in the NFL, even though the Bills were my Super Bowl favorite to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. But the difference in the game was, again, even with Gabe Davis going down, Josh Allen making enough plays, and we've seen enough of that. Again, I hate to just be a dead horse about it. It's about in a year without Mahomes, without Jackson, without Burrow, without these guys, you want to see. And this was Buffalo's 6th straight win in the opening round of the playoffs. So. They want to see they realize what's in front of them, and I said it's almost unfair how much they rely just on Josh Allen, and so but 9 times out of 10, save the week against Philadelphia, he's going to get it done, and so it's just we saw this when Tampa Bay was still playing great with Baker Mayfield, and they trade back 4 or 5 touchdowns in a row, and then after they came back 21-0 down, they got hot. Then they traded lead changes 3 or 4 times with the Patriots. And then obviously at the first game of the year against the Ravens. The point is, there's been 4 or 5 times where Josh Allen just took over. I said because it went from a 13-10 game to 17-13, 17-20. I guess 16 because they missed an extra point. But anyway, point was the first 4 drives combined between the 2 teams in the fourth quarter, they kept answering each other. Jacksonville answered twice, and they just ran out of time. Josh Allen left only 38 seconds left or whatever it was, 30 seconds left. But to Jacksonville's point, he said, I feel like they have some nice pieces. They're only going to get better on top of – I feel like Trevor Lawrence answered twice, but Josh Allen, just like he'd done several other times this year, right when they needed an answer, like I said, they scored touchdowns the last couple drives. And so,
better clock management.
Yeah.
Go back and look at that, too, because that's what you said with not utilizing ETN and trying to maybe slow down the pace of the game rather than just put the ball back in Josh Allen's hands. I mean, it's easy to go back and look at it now, but that was a big difference for me in that game.
Right. But that's just it. It was just, I mean, good kudos to Jacksonville for answering twice and just running out of time at the end. But just in a game that was back and forth every time this year where Buffalo needed a big play. Even though they lost a couple weeks ago to Philadelphia, when the game was on the line, Josh Allen gets it done. And just, I mean, that's what you look for this time of year. That's why you pay him all the money. And so eventually you got to have some balance or somebody else, I feel like, making those big plays. But if it just feels like Buffalo just leans all on Josh Allen, but at the same time, it usually works out for him.
Yeah, it's worked out to this point.
It's going to be a great matchup to see us if they didn't play each other in the regular season this year, but just how Houston matched up with Josh Allen got, if it wasn't for defensive penalties, would have had about 10 sacks on Allen. Mm-hmm. And I do say Denver's defense is right up there with him. So, like, that's a good rematch from last year. I'm really interested to see how that game's going to shake out. I said, but for this game specifically, that was the difference of the game. And that was the whole reason why you picked Buffalo to begin with and like Jacksonville. I was like, well, they've just been on fire. But, like, why I was originally leaning towards Buffalo was just like Jacksonville's been the better, more consistent team over the last 2 months. They have a lot more balance on both sides of the ball because they probably have a better defense than Buffalo. But Josh Allen's still above anybody else. He's an elite quarterback. And even Trevor Lawrence playing really, really good, Josh Allen was just too much. So that was a hell of a game. It was a lot of fun to watch. It was close all the way through.
It was a good game. Rolling into the next game, it was also a good game, but for different reasons. The San Francisco 49ers knock off the defending Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, 23-19. Jalen Hurts, 168 yards, 1 touchdown. Saquon, 106 yards on the ground on 26 carries. Devontae Smith leading the team in receiving yards for 70 yards. With Dallas Goedert, 33 and a touchdown. Had another big-time touchdown, but got called back because of offensive holding. On the San Francisco 49ers side, Brock Purdy, 18 of 31 for 262 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Juwan Jennings, wide receiver, 1 touchdown for 29 yards, or one passing touchdown for 29 yards. Christian McCaffrey, 48 yards on the ground. And then Demarcus Robinson, 111 yards and a touchdown with CMC, 66 and 2. And then the juice check, Kyle Hughes check, 49 yards. Stepping up as that gadget player that he's been all his whole career. But Brock Purdy stepped up to the plate, played a great game. Defensively, the 49ers defense played about how you expect Robert Saleh's defense to play. And it's crazy to think that they're doing this without Fred Warner and their rookie D tackle, the first-round pick, who was having a great year, and Nick Bosa. Now they're doing it without George Kittle. They don't have Brandon Ayuk. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously guys I'm missing as well that have been hurt that have been key contributors, and they knock off the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles have an interesting offseason coming up for sure, just because of obviously Philadelphia's sports media in Philly just seems wild. They won the Super Bowl last year, and people were still calling for Sirianni to lose his job. So you take that as you will. I think there's no shot Sirianni is gone after this year, obviously. That's just media noise and whatever you want to call it. But I think A.J. Brown's gone. Jalen Hurts obviously has won Super Bowl, so I'm not going to say anything too crazy. But Jalen Hurts' passing ability has definitely became not necessarily a liability, but it's become reasons they've lost games. Yeah. We saw it in this game here. And I'm not saying that I think it's more on the offensive coordinator who did get fired. Greg Romans did get fired, I think, earlier today or yesterday. So they're a new offensive coordinator. And fun fact, Jalen Hurts had a different offensive coordinator for every season of his NFL career. So, and there you got to think there's 2 Super Bowl rings in there. But for the 49ers, this next week's matchup against the Seahawks, I think is exactly what they want. It's a division rival. They went 1-1 with each other this year. I'm excited to see what the 49ers come out and play because I think the Seahawks are heavy betting favorites. If I had to take a just random guess off the rip, they definitely have to be. But the 49ers I think this is exactly what Shanahan wants. Hey, we're the underdogs. Nobody expects us to win. Everybody's hurt, banged up, and we're going to come out and play football. Not an excuse last week, but Lane Johnson did not play, so that's why the Eagles lost, in my personal opinion. Lane Johnson warmed up during the game and said, I don't feel like I can play. So that's why. As soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah, they're going to lose. And,
yeah.
I mean, that's a very stupid reason to say a team's going to lose, but it is I talked about it last week, and I'm talking about it again. But Lane Johnson's record, when the Philadelphia Eagles record when Lane Johnson's on the field is outrageous compared to when he's not. And this week proved it again.
Right.
So probably saw the last, not seen the last, but Lane Johnson probably retiring. Brandon Graham's going back into retirement, I'm guessing. So Philadelphia Eagles will look different next year. Their defense is still an elite defense. They just got to figure out some offensive things. I don't know if that's offensive scheme-wise or different players. But it'll be interesting to see what happens either way. But yeah, San Francisco gets the upset win, kind of gets revenge for that NFC Championship game where Brock Purdy went down and all that other stuff happened. So
yeah. Well, and just the fact of, like I said, it goes back to, I feel like it doesn't even matter before the playoffs, and now especially with the playoffs, it doesn't even matter what happens on Saturday with the Seahawks. Like, I feel like as much as Mike Vrabel and Sean Payton and the guy from Seattle, like DeMarco O'Ryan for like turning that.
Leo Colomb and
as worthy as those guys are, I feel like Kyle Shanahan should be Coach of the Year because of all the things that you already touched on about like you said, missing their two biggest defensive stars in Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, who are all pros, not just Pro Bowlers, but the best at their position. And they said, and then lose Deebo Samuel a couple years ago from free agency, and Brandon Ayuk not be available, and brought your quarterback Brock Purdy's not healthy for the whole year, for almost half the year, and then still talking about 2 weeks ago that they were fighting down to the last week fighting for the 1 seed, and then you go into the defending Super Bowl champs, and I felt like from the get go, like the Niners started off with 2 big plays to their wide receiver, and like I said, I feel like they were pretty much in control. Even when the Eagles responded right after that touchdown, I always felt like San Francisco was in control of that game. The more physical team in Philadelphia. And like I said, and like with Hurts, like I thought he did some nice things. I think he's athletic, but it just goes to show, like, yes, he won that Super Bowl, and we know he has the arm talent to make those throws, but consistently, or like where I feel like he's still a step below, like on the really good or pretty good, but not on the elite level quarterback. And then, like I said, the difference, and the biggest difference in the game, I thought was Brock Purdy's 2 throws. The first one, the touchdown to the tight end in the corner, where he kind of twisted his body, was a heck of a catch, or when he caught it and then he ran the rest of the way. But then the last touchdown being another one of those where he gets out to the left, makes a guy miss, steps up in the pocket, and fires a strike. It just seems like Purdy doesn't get the attention that he deserves. He just kind of, like I said, Mr. Irrelevant, but there's that little bit of scrappiness, little feistiness to him. So I like watching Brock Purdy and like who knows? Because I thought originally that they would get, like, they might not make the playoffs, and then I thought they would actually beat my Super Bowl favorite, the Seahawks, last week, and then they laid an egg. So what San Francisco team we're going to see this week? But like you said, I feel that you're right that they have, like, Shanahan has those guys right where he wants everybody. You know what I mean? I just feel like I'm just an underdog. It's played them well. So I can't remember if this is the 4th or 5th time the Niners have made at least the second round of the playoffs under Shanahan. Like, just every year, these kind of scrappy wins, not afraid to go on the road and play anybody. San Francisco is a dangerous team, and I kind of want to say real quick about the 8 teams left in general. I guess I could go for that on the picks, but while I was thinking about it, I just wanted to say, like I said, I definitely feel like the top 8 teams made it. The Niners under the radar, we were like, oh yeah, they're pretty good, but like didn't really realize for the last couple of weeks just what their record was. Like, oh yeah, the Niners. But like, I'm saying that because at certain points the Packers and the Jaguars you can make a case for. But just saying that, I said at certain times you can make a case for, like I said, the Jaguars, one of the hottest teams coming in the playoffs. Like the Jaguars, the Packers, even the Eagles, they didn't look consistent all year long. I feel like they never really put a whole game together, but because they're the defending Super Bowl champs. But right on the outside, which you look at, those were the 3 teams that blew a lead, or like blew last minute leads, and then you have the 8 teams we have now. You look at them, I'm like, yeah, watching Denver this year for most of the year, and watching New England, and watching the Bills, and watching the Texans and their last 15 games in that defense, and having the Seahawks, and the Niners are part of that. So I feel like the NFL got lucky or got it right this year as far as, like, I feel like the legitimate top 8 teams are or at least most 8 consistent teams are the ones still left standing. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
That's all good. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I feel like the last 8 teams are the 8 teams that deserve to be there. Obviously there's obviously what ifs, you stay healthy, but whatever. But right. The Niners have defied all of that and still made it to where they're at. Rolling into the Sunday Night Football game, an absolute snooze fest. I watched I'm gonna be honest, I got a golf simulator type thing, so I probably played 100 holes of golf this weekend. So I was like, I'll get home at halftime. It's not gonna be much of a game. And I got home, and I turned it on. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna go play some more golf. So I'm gonna be honest, I didn't watch the game. I went back and watched the highlights. I watched Justin Herbert running for his life, which is about what I assumed happened. But the Patriots get the win, 16-3. Justin Herbert 159 yards. He got sacked 6 times. He also led the team in rushing yards for 57 yards. McConkey, 32 receiving yards. Gadsden, rookie tight end, 30 yards. And Keenan Allen, 25 yards. Just an absolute snooze fest offensively for the Chargers. Running for his life, offensive line's in shambles. And we saw that, been hurt all year. But Drake May, 268 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He also led the team in rushing yards for 10 carries for 66 yards. And then Ramondre Stevenson kind of split reps at the running back position, 53 yards rushing. He also led the team in receiving yards for 75. And then Keyshawn Bootsy, 66 yards, kind of a guy who's kind of revitalizing his career up there in New England. And then Hunter Henry, 64 yards and a touchdown against his old team. So this was a defensive game for sure. Most of the highlights that I watched were just defensive plays, defensive knockdowns, defensive sacks. Because Drake May got sacked 5 times as well. So, yeah. I mean, just great defensive game. The Patriots just had more success, I guess, being at home. Justin Herbert is officially the what-if man. You know, what if his offensive line stayed healthy, what would have been. Because their defense, obviously, led by Derwin James, is a good NFL defense. They had been all year. They probably 75%, if not 80% of the reason they went 11-6 was that defense making plays and stops, and that offense just crumbling to pieces. But the Patriots beat a team with a winning record, which everybody didn't know if they could, and they didn't do it in a way that was necessarily convincing. But also that's kind of the style of the game just started from the get-go. But I'm interested to see what this week's test against the Texans is. Another Patriots game. It's kind of like we talked about last week with the Steelers and Texans. It was the kind of game that the Steelers could pull out and win just because it's the kind of game they like to play. And this game against the Texans, where their offense isn't the best, where their defense is elite, is about right in the Patriots' alley. It'll be interesting to see which one of those offenses can succeed to get to the AFC Championship for sure. But that's really all I have. Hope Justin Herbert gets an offensive line because, I mean, he is a great NFL quarterback. The man is legitimately running for his life every play, it seems like.
Right. No, and I feel like you said, I feel like using a Tomlinism of Pittsburgh, I feel like Mike Vrabel's the same way. It's like style points don't matter. And so I feel like Vrabel's perfectly comfortable with they got after Herbert early and often when they were up 3-0 and they never felt like it was even that close. So I feel like that kind of like Denver had done some this year. I felt like New England left some plays in the bag, knowing that, for the most part, the Chargers weren't really threatening. And then until they got the fourth quarter, they needed a touchdown drive to just put it on ice. But what a great touchdown at the beginning of the show. But for some of these other defenses, what a defensive performance by the Patriots. I said, Herbert obviously being hurt, going back to that primetime game about a month ago or whatever. So, I get it. And one of his top 2 targets is, no disrespect, great career in Keenan Allen. I said, looking for some more weapons, but still, I didn't expect it to look like that. Like you said, they've got some guys on the back end. Now, granted, the Chargers didn't have him for most of the year, but one of their big offseason pickups was having Najee Harris, who had consecutive 1,000-yard seasons in Pittsburgh. And I feel like that was a big Achilles heel for the Chargers, and Justin Herbert this year was not really have much of a rushing game. And it came to rear its head against the Patriots. I said Vital having 11 for 31, Hampton having 1 for -1 yard out of the backfield as a receiver. So, like I said, some nice pieces, but just more about, again, the dominance and the making enough plays with Drake May. So that's Foxborough is a tough place to play, and depending on what happens in Denver, it's a very. I mean, I hope for your sake that the Broncos win. I said, but if the Bills have to come to New England beats Houston, it's just I don't know. I feel like the Patriots are one of the most complete teams, and I said that was complete domination, and May did enough. So I saw some big time throws by May. Nothing really flashy, but the game didn't call for it. So excited to see that game. That's probably the game I'm most looking forward to this week. That was honestly the Texans-Patriots.
Yeah, it'll be a good defensive shootout. It'll
Yeah.
be kind of another test for the Patriots again
Yeah.
to see if they're a legit team or not. But I mean, I feel like even if the Patriots beat the Texans, people are still going to say they're frauds.
Yeah.
just the way the media cycle has been. Rolling into our Monday night
Well, I was
football.
just gonna say we've already talked about it a couple times this year. It's like obviously Mike Vrabel deserves to be on that short list of Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Whatever they've won, 13 of 14 or 14 of 15 games now. So
Rolling into our Monday night football game. At halftime, this game was 7-6, and the final score was 30-6. The Houston Texans beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 30-6, which ultimately led to Mike Tomlin stepping down today. So not getting fired, but he stepped down, which we all said thought that was how it was going to have to happen, and that's how it went down. Later on, when we get to the state of the Steelers, I'll read Twitch's text to the group chat when I sent the screenshot into Tomlin retiring or stepping down and had me rolling there for a minute. But recap of this game, Aaron Rodgers offensively 146 yards, 1 interception, took 4 sacks. Jalen Warren 43 yards on the ground. DK Metcalf 2 catches for 42 yards. MVS 26 receiving yards, and then Gainwell for another 26. Adam Thielen, 25 yards receiving. And then Pat Freiermuth, 1 catch for 18 yards, which I feel like is highway robbery. I understand that, you trade for Jonnu Smith and you have these other tight ends you want to get reps, but Freiermuth has been a stud the last couple of years, and for him only getting 1 catch for 18 yards in the playoffs is, I feel like, a crime. For the Texans, on the other hand, C.J. Stroud, 250 yards. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Rookie running back Woody Marks taking the running back load at 112 yards and a touchdown, with Nick Chubb 48 yards on the ground. Christian Kirk 144 yards and a touchdown, though, receiving, with Jalen Higgins 39 yards. So, this game, the Texans were up, and then 2 defensive touchdowns will, kind of make it look like it was way worse than it was. Aaron Rodgers' last ever NFL pass is going to be a pick 6, more than likely, unless he decides to come back another year, or complete the Green Bay quarterback cycle and go play in Minnesota for a year. So a lot of options for him. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Also interesting to see who the Pittsburgh Steelers will hire, but this is textbook Texans defense win. They've been elite all year, and Twitch has hit on it a couple times a day, but just that pass rush by Hunter and Anderson has been top tier. I think they solidified themselves as the number 1 pass rushing duo in the league. Just consistency all year. Nick Bonito and Cooper had a good run there, and then they've been inconsistent towards down that last stretch. And same thing with the Eagles, and there's a couple other guys I'm probably forgetting. The Steelers could be on that conversation sometimes, but there's 30-6, 2 defensive touchdowns. Pittsburgh's in an interesting situation they haven't been in 18 years or 19 years. So, be interested to see where the Steelers go, and that Texans defense is proven hard to beat in the play, or it's going to be hard to beat down the stretch here. So, I'll throw it over our Steelers reporter here. Twitch, what is your take from this game? Besides, you were right and said you're going to be first one out of the playoffs. You're going to lose in the first round.
I said
at 10-7, and it's exactly how it shook out.
At 9-8, 10-7, you're the last team in or the first team out. We were the last team as of the very last seconds of the 2025 season, and then we get our ass kicked in the first round. So,
word for word.
Yeah. So we finished the year going 10-8, just like last year when we lost the last 5 games of the year. So for all those saying, "Oh, we won the division and we went to the playoffs and we got to host the game," still 10-8 again. So. I feel like all the signs were there. It kind of played out the way I thought that I picked the Steelers last week, going off momentum and trying to have a little faith in my team. But like I said, I've been all over the Texans' nest the last couple months because of that defense. And again, not to repeats the same points, but it's just in an offensive-driven era in league. I said it's the Texans find a way to win games on their own. For a lot of teams, they tell you, if you turn the ball over 3 times like that, that's a death sentence. And then for the Texans defense, because they did the same thing when they had back-to-back turnovers against the Chargers. Same thing, 3 drives, 3 points. That's it. So it's it gives you that little flexibility. The Pittsburgh was 2 for 14 on 3rd down yesterday. There was a certain stretch during the game where on the first 2 turnovers, Pittsburgh had 10 plays for 9 yards. I mean, it's just like every time I feel like, and here's what I mean by it plays out exactly the way I thought it would. Number one, DK Metcalf. Didn't want to have him. I said I like the guy. I think he's good. I said, but like I've had him in fantasy before. That's exactly what he does. He'll either have the big play. He'll have those for like, ooh, it looks good. He had 5 catches for 100 yards because he catches a 40-yard bomb, or he does absolutely dog shit nothing. He had 2 catches for 42 yards in the second drive of the game. Didn't have another one the rest of the game. So that's your number one guy. Should have got. You think Pickens would have had better numbers? Absolutely. So if not only as the number one guy, but Pittsburgh's clear thing we've been saying all year is not having a number 2. So, good call on the George Pickens thing and Metcalf disappearing, and I feel like one of the biggest things of the game, besides the pressure, and they did touch on it last night on the broadcast, but it was just like, one of the few bright spots this year is like, for the last couple of years has been Jalen Warren and then Kenneth Gainwell, who. Not really small and like the fastest guy on the field, but he's also not running anybody over. He's almost like a little wide receiver. But like between the two guys during this 4-1 stretch, they started off the year 4-1 and they ended off the regular season going 4-1. The Steelers did, and a big part of that formula they found out at the end of the year was neither Warren. It was kind of like committee. Neither Gainwell or Warren would typically have more than 50 yards of rushing or receiving. But by the time you figured out both of their couple, moving the chains, like scrapping together. Total, they might have between 150 and 180 yards. And a lot of that was because of after the yards catches. Houston shut that down. I mean, I don't know how many times, especially Jalen Warren is the best example of that, where you might keep him contained for 3.5 quarters, but he makes that play that goes 70 yards, breaks 2 tackles, and sets him up at 1st and 10 at the goal. Houston had none of that. I don't know how many times they tried to go. They just completely shut those 2 guys down. I don't have it right in front of me, but I think they had less than 100 total yards between the 2 of them. So completely shut them out. I'm with you. I've been saying all year, and I don't know what the hell we're doing. Because I sat there, I was like, "Is that the first time we can throw to Freiermuth?" And like we go back to 2 plays later, and he makes a miraculous catch to put us in good field position. And then same thing, we don't go for the rest of the game. Meanwhile, Jonnu Smith has a holding penalty, allows a couple sacks, has a drop ball. I'm just like, I don't see what we see in him. I don't know. But as far as Houston, Houston out Pittsburgh the Steelers, because for years, like I said, the bread and butter going back to Cowher was you had Kevin Green and Greg Lloyd were all pros, and then you had Jason Gilden, who was, for people that aren't Steelers fans, was actually up until James Harrison the career Steelers defense was the career leader in sacks of the Steelers. Jason Gilden and Joey Porter, Lamar Woodley, James Harrison, T.J. Watt, now Alex Heisman. So it's usually the edge rusher. That's no matter if they don't do anything else well. That's what Houston's built off of, is punch you in the mouth and get pressure on the quarterback. And Houston did that a lot better than what we did. And obviously the big red flag for Houston is, let me back up. The other thing that absolutely drove me nuts, this was another thing that I could have put for what made me twitch, was this has happened several times. It's happened several times against the Steelers. As good as Joey Porter Jr. was, the rest of the crew, like Nico Collins goes out. That'll be interesting, a development and a big determination on who I think will win that Patriots-Texans game, because they don't have a lot of other offensive weapons. Yeah. They have a lot of good guys, but my point is Nico Collins goes out twice in the game yesterday and then misses from the third quarter on, and then okay, they've got really one other weapon in Kirk, and Kirk goes for almost $140 on you. I don't know what you're doing there. And all the guys that were saying last night during halftime, wow, we haven't seen the Texans. I'm surprised they'll be able to run on this Steelers defense. Which, kudos to us. I say us because I'm part of the team. Maybe. I'm putting my job application out there next week. But people being surprised. We did a lot better job against Jamar Gibbs and the Lions and the Browns and the Ravens. Pittsburgh had done a better job over the last month. But this is the same team that had given up 250 to the Bills, and they ran the same play 25 times. And then the very next week they gave up 230 to the Ravens. So, yeah, just really disappointing. Couldn't get anything started on offense all night. Texans putting it on ice with 2 defensive touchdowns, but it just goes to show too. The other games, we beat. If we played the Patriots again, we probably would have lost. But you go back to that Chargers game. It was a Sunday night game. I think it was 25-10 or something like that. And then the Bills was 26-10. So very reminiscent of those types of games for the Steelers this year, in that. The score is almost identical in all 3 of those, and it just goes to show what we talked about at the beginning of this year, and how Pittsburgh choked the last 5 games of last year. It was when it comes to quality opponents playoff teams, they're not. This goes to show we're not even competitive. And like I said, like I've said this before, and we'll get this on the State of the Steelers about Tomlin no longer being the Steelers coach. I think he's a likable guy. I think he's got a likable story. I think he did a lot with some people that were already there. But as far as building a team, I said, but like he tied the the Marvin Lewis with the record of 7 straight playoff losses, most such in NFL history. And when you look at those games, and I'll try to keep this as short as I can, but when the first one being in the Patriots in the AFC Championship game in 2016, we're down 36-9 going into the fourth quarter. Then the next year we have Blake Bortles in Jacksonville, puts up 45 on us. We're the 2 seed. We get a first round bye, lose 45-42. We were down 21-0 at the end of the first quarter of that game. The next year was the Brown. The next year we missed the playoffs the next 2 years, and then 2020 we played COVID season. Baker Mayfield down 28-0 at the end of the first quarter of the Browns. Then the very next time we make the playoffs, we're down 21-0 to the Bills. We're down. We're up. We scored to the Chiefs in 2021. Roethlisberger's last year. We scored a touchdown first on a defensive touchdown by Watt, 7-0. Between halftime and the first, I think what was like first 3 minutes of the second half, it went from like 7-0 to 35-7 Chiefs. Like in the third, it started the third quarter. And so then, like I said, then we got steamrolled. We were down 21-0 to the Bills and made it a little bit closer, 21-0 to the Ravens last. So it's just like it just goes to show. Long story short, in all these 7 losses yesterday. Granted, I was still hopeful because I was still looking, and maybe I just was spoiled with Roethlisberger. But even when it was 10-6 and it looked ugly, I'm just like, at least Big Ben at the end is that even in games that were ugly, they would finally break through. They'd finally have that one drive, and I kept waiting for that last night. I said, but I knew it was over once they got that scoop and score. I was like, there's no way when it went 17-6. But kudos to them. Just a frustrating year. Kind of played out the way I thought for the Steelers, obviously, but for the Texans, that defense is obviously championship caliber ready. Texans now, what did I say? They won 13 out of 15.
Yeah.
On top of, C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud's the biggest question mark in that because he didn't have his best game because they also put the ball on the field another 3 or 4 times on fumbles. So they've got to figure that out fast, especially against Foxborough and that Patriots defense. So like I said, he made enough plays. It'll be interesting to see what Nico Collins does. Well, I'm assuming that if he's cleared for concussion protocol, that he'll play this week. I said, but just, what a complete dominant win by the Texans and the defense, and just, those two overwhelming. I wanted the same. Like I said, I rode my Steelers momentum last week, but I'm sorry, Texans, I won't doubt you again that I bet against them twice in the last 2 months. I paid for it both times, but just, what a phenomenal effort and dominant performance by that Texans defense.
Yeah, most definitely. Rolling in, that recaps these games. Josie, do you have any NFL takes while you're here at the table with us?
Yeah, if you ever wonder what Twitch lays in bed and thinks about at night when he can't sleep, this is what's going through his head. 7 fucking...
Yeah.
Twitching out. We're going to go over some college football. The college football playoff last Thursday and Friday. Miami upsets Ole Miss 31-27. Ole Miss's quarterback, Chamberlain, absolute stud at quarterback, wins a D2 national championship last year and then rolls in and gives Miami a run for his money. He's right out of time. Carson Beck stepped up to the plate big time. Kind of crazy. I was not a Carson Beck believer. I don't really know if I still am, but their defense is lights out. So Miami is going to be playing Indiana in the national championship. Indiana beat Oregon 56-22, which is a crazy score. And obviously, Indiana never took the foot off the gas pedal. Indiana kept scoring. They scored a late pick six and everything else. I'm interested. I think Indiana did it to knock the little school shouldn't be in the playoff stigma out, because if Indiana's beating Oregon, who is supposed to be perennial powerhouse 56-22, then maybe JMU should have a chance, which makes sense by Kirk Cignetti because he's a little school guy. He won a D2 national championship, and then he went to JMU and took JMU to a couple bowl games, and now he's at Indiana doing what he's doing. But the national championship will be Monday, January 19th, so this next Monday. Interested to see how this one shakes out. I think Indiana wins by 10 points at least.
Mm-hmm.
Miami's defense is good, but everything that's been thrown to Indiana this year, Mendoza, the quarterback, just stepped up to the plate and played great. And my favorite stat about this, which if you're not a college football fan, you're probably like whatever, it doesn't really matter. But it's impressive that there's not a single 5-star on that football team, 5-star recruit, and there's only 5 4-stars. So everybody else that's out there on the field is a 3-star recruit, which means and they're just they're running over people. So I think it's another good story. It's kind of like a storybook story of, you don't have to be the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, but you have to have good team, good camaraderie. Mendoza said after they beat after the last game they won, the last round of the playoffs, in the post-game press conference, they were like, so what are you going to do now? He's like, I'm going to have some beers with the boys. Yeah. He's just like kind of a down-to-earth guy. You can tell he's kind of a nerd. You can just by the way he talks and the way he operates. But I'm excited for the national championship, to say the least, just because it's 2 teams. Indiana was not favored to win the playoffs. I think they were number 5 in betting odds to win the Natty. And then Miami was, I didn't see where they were at, but they're the 10 seed. Like, they were supposed to be a first-round loss or second-round loss, and now here they are in the national championship game. So I think it shows the changing of the landscape in college football with the NIL and anybody can win and all that. And it's kind of screwing these guys when it comes to the transfer portal, but also Indiana's had some big-time commits out of the transfer portal just because you're playing in the national championship game, people want to come play for you.
Well, yeah, and just obviously, like, every year, what little bit I do know is just, like, kind of like college baseball. I follow college baseball, too, but it's like it's SEC dominant. So, like, if you're not an SEC school, and so I feel like that's part of why you're driving the score up. As they said, was the small school, not an SEC school. On top of, like you said, you don't belong here, and just that convincing fashion. We're gonna put no doubt on your mind. I mean, I like the moxie that Cincinnati has, like with it. So, like you said, I'm looking forward to. I'll actually watch part of the national championship, and like said, you have a team that is a basketball school. Predominantly or historically, and not really been there before, but it kind of reminds me of the year that KU and Missouri were really good. I mean, I think Indiana's here to stay for at least as long as
until
he's there.
Until Sig goes somewhere else, probably.
Yeah, but you have what I consider. I said I'm not the college football expert anymore, but like what's to me looked like what little bit I have watched has been one of the most dominant teams since that Joe Burrow LSU.
Yeah,
a lot of reminiscent, a lot of similar statistics against every test. Going against Miami, who was a powerhouse in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, they were, unfortunately, but were the program, but obviously decades of being kind of dormant. Now they're back in the title game. So you have here's an old house, but like don't deserve to be here. Like Missouri, like Miami used to always be here, and like now they were the 10 seed.
Yeah.
Underdog, are they back? Now going against like Indiana, are they a new powerhouse? Like. Some great storylines. I'm going to tune in. I'm with you. I think that this is a whole different monster than what Miami's faced so far. So,
yeah. An ACC and Big Ten national championship would be nice, just because ESPN, no matter how unbiased they say they are, they're definitely SEC bias.
Oh yeah.
And the fact there's not an SEC school in there, to say the least. And you brought up the Joe Burrow 2019. This is just a crazy stat that I saw that doesn't really mean anything, but so every week they take the top passing quarterback from like the playoffs, and every single top passing quarterback from the playoffs would have took Joe Burrow's averages down if he would have thrown for that in the game, which is crazy to think about. Just shows how dominant that 2019 Joe Burrow LSU team was across the board. I mean, 2 years ago, they went through and named the NFL starters, and there was like 5 All-Pros. There was 10 Pro Bowlers off that team. There was guys that were getting second team All-Pros, and just that team, the LSU 2019 team was elite. And it's going to be hard to have another team that's going to have that many weapons, because you got to think, even the year before there was Jay Jettis on that team as well, and Justin Jefferson's
Jamar Chase.
Yeah, Jamar Chase was on that national championship winning team, and just the amount of guys they had out of there. So that's our college football talk for the week. We'll recap the national championship next week. Excited that it's happening. Kind of sad college football is over. I really enjoy watching college football almost more than NFL, just because of storylines like this when you get Indiana, who hasn't been in a national championship game since World War II. And then you got Miami, who was really good in the 80s and 90s, who's been kind of finding themselves recently, and then they upset they get 3 upset wins in the playoffs and they're playing in the Natty. So interested to see that for sure. But we're going to roll into the divisional round playoff games here. Got 4 of them, all on different channels, which is, always fun. Get to flip around and try to figure out what channel everything's on.
At least these should all be locals.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I said this last week, but I've been saying this for years. But this is my personal favorite football weekend, college or pro. Like, every year, what I consider the best week of football. So enjoy it while you can, because it's just a reminder that the end of football season, that long off season's just right around the corner, unfortunately.
Start watching hockey, man.
But this is, no, to me, this is the best weekend in football, because especially this year, you've got literally the top 8 teams. So last week, you get 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. You win those games, you're in the conference championship, 1 game from the Super Bowl. And you go back and look. I encourage anybody to go back and look at the last few years, last 10 years. Go look at, usually about 3 or 4 of those games come down. Like, that's where, like, for instance, first game that comes to mind is like that Justin Jefferson Saints Breeze game. Like, that's where that game was a divisional round. Like, you think of some of these other crazy games through the years. Like, usually it seems like 3 out of the 4 games are like games that we watched this weekend. So, like, yet last week was just a preview of what we're going to see this week, with the stakes being higher and like 2 solid games against. Again, these are all the top 8 teams, top competition. Sign me up. I'm stoked. This is my favorite week of football of the entire year, every year.
All right, well, on Saturday then, afternoon, we have the Bills rolling out to Denver and playing the Broncos, who did get that 1 seed bye, so they haven't been on the field for a little while. They were able to rest some people.
Yeah.
What's your take here, Box? You have them seeded number 2 overall, clear back in July, and they end up getting the 1 seed. So crazy fun for you, for sure.
Crazy to say it. And I said this last week, and you both looked at me like I was crazy, but I said I want to play the Bills in the next round. Which, granted, I would gladly play the Steelers or the Chargers if they would have won. But I'm happy. I was telling OSV when I got here earlier, but I'm happy we're playing the Bills now, because I'd rather lose to the Bills in the divisional round coming off a bye than play them in the AFC Championship and lose and be that close to the Super Bowl with this. Because this is the team to beat in the playoffs right now. This is Josh Allen's storybook year of he doesn't have Mahomes, Burrow, Jackson, those other guys that have knocked him out or gave him close runs for his money. And we're at home, we're coming off the bye. Sean Payton hopefully has some stuff cooked up for the offense. Last time they were out, it was kind of lackluster, which I think was on purpose. You keep some things in the pocket, in the bag for the playoff game here. And I think this game's gonna, and we've seen this isn't the same Bills team in the past where you have like a Gabe Davis or a Stephon Diggs, big play guys. It really comes down to, can you keep Josh Allen from making off script plays, and can you keep James Cook in the box and keep him under 70 rushing yards, 80 rushing yards. And I think the Denver defense is tuned up for that. I think we have the perfect edge rushing duo of Cooper and Bonito that, are both, they're not your typical edge rusher, like big, bulky, get off the edge guys. Nick Bonito's a outside linebacker who walks up and, he's lengthy, he's fast, he's twitchy, which is exactly what you need for Josh Allen. Shout out to the Twitch. But I'm excited for this game either way. I feel like it's going to be a great game to watch. You're playing the Bills, who, like I just said, storybook, supposed to be the Bills' year to go to the Super Bowl, and then you got the Broncos, who I had them as the 2 seed, made the 1 seed, but a lot of people had them, a wild card team or not even making the playoffs. And so this is the test. I think we win this game. I think we can. I can say easily, because you play the Texans or the Patriots defense in the championship. It's going to be hard either way. But I feel like this is going to be a harder game than the AFC Championship game would be, for sure. But I'm excited to see what our offense looks like. I think our defense will be good. Drake Greenlaw's coming back off his another foot injury he had. So I think Peyton will have the guys tuned up, and it's really just going to come down to, can we keep Josh Allen from doing Josh Allen things, which we said all year. So I'm obviously taking the Broncos in this one. I'm so excited to listen to Tony Romo call this game as well on CBS. I can't tell you how elated I am that I get to listen to Tony Romo for 3.5 hours talk about Sean Payton screen passes. So, woo!
You could watch your team lose 30-6 and have to listen to Joe Buck. So
Joe Buck, Tony Romo, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Give me. I'd rather listen to J.J. Watt. I think J.J. Watt deserves to be the number 1 on CBS now.
Right. Side note, before we get on a complete side tangent, but I feel like Brady's gotten better. I've actually enjoyed
he's definitely improved this year.
I've just enjoyed listening to certain times. I don't know if you guys saw the about throwing in the wind.
Yeah.
There's just like some of those videos and stuff. It's like how he explains and slows the game down. Anyway, not that I've ever been a huge Brady fan, but yeah. So like I said, Denver obviously being whatever they've won, 13 out of 14 games in the year. I'm not going to be shocked if Denver wins. I said like that defense is going to keep it close. I think it's going to be a really close game, and if their defense can keep it close, Bo Nix doesn't have to beat Josh Allen, but Bo Nix has definitely taken some huge strides this year, and just making enough big plays. And like I said, at home. That being said, I don't know where it's going to come from. Is it going to come from Shakir or what? But I'm going to go with, I feel like Josh Allen just refuses in a close game, and just like last week when a drive, they need a drive with 4 or 5 minutes left to go in the game. Josh Allen's going to find a way. I just feel like, it hasn't always been pretty, but he's put the team on his back this year, and he's just been a man on a mission. And I feel like I'm not going to be shocked because of the pass rush of the defense of the Broncos. I do feel like it's going to be close, and Denver is a sneaky hard, really hard, not even sneaky. That's just a hard place to play. But I have the Bills in this one. I'm going back with kind of like the Texans. I'm sorry that I jumped off the bandwagon last week of the Bills. I said, but just they were my preseason pick to go to the Super Bowl, and I said, and I feel like Josh Allen makes it another round. So I feel like he makes enough plays. Like he's just one step above. He's a step above Nix at quarterback, and I feel like that's the Broncos have a way better defense than the Bills, and maybe even more pieces on offense. But Josh Allen is one of one, and he's a top 5 player in the NFL for a reason.
Yeah. And reigning MVP for a reason. I mean,
yeah.
Well, that takes us to our Saturday night game on Fox at 7 p.m. The Niners going up to Seattle playing the Seahawks. We talked about that game, this rematch a little bit already, but I don't see all the blanks filled in here on the scorecard. So I'm curious to see what happens here.
Yeah, to say the least. Excited for this NFC West matchup. I feel like the Saturday games, in my opinion, are going to be better. The 2 Saturday games combined are better than the 2 Sunday games, in my opinion. That's just, I'm also biased because my team's playing, but I just feel like 2 good matchups here. But I'm excited for this game. Seahawks, coming off they got the 1 seed, but they beat the 49ers to get the 1 seed. And like Twitch said earlier, I think the 49ers have some stuff in their back pocket for this game for sure, especially losing. And even when they played the Seahawks 2 weeks ago, it was like a very uncharacteristic 49ers team. Like, it was slow. They weren't really doing the crazy stuff to McCaffrey. There wasn't a lot of motion. Wasn't a lot of typical Shanahan offense. So I think they were kind of expecting to play these guys again in the playoffs. And Seahawks coming off the bye, interested to see. And my blank is the one that's unfilled in here, and I was going back and forth on it. Seahawks 1 seed, they've been great all year. But I think I'm going to go with the 49ers just because the textbook, and, this is the first, it's the 1 seed for the Seahawks. It's first-time head coach. And I'm not questioning McDonald's, coaching in any way, but, you'll get – there's not very many times a team gets the 1 seed and, know how to handle it. And I think the Seahawks come out slow in this game. I mean, and granted, it's at home. The Seahawks have been electric all year, so there's a chance they don't. But the Seahawks have showed times this year that, they've started slow and kind of late. And I think the 49ers are the perfect team to take advantage of that, starting slow. And the 49ers play really good clock control football, or like control the clock and make the game their pace. And I think it's perfect for them. And I'm still, I'm not going to catch heat for this, but there's a lot of people who are Sam Darnold bleeders, and I'm still just not sold on him. Their defense has bailed him out in a lot of situations this year across the board, and their defense is lights out. I've got to credit the defense all day, but I'm just not sold on Sam Darnold being able to win in that clutch situation. He did it against the Rams when they played that Thursday night football game, but I mean, besides that, there's only been 1 or 2 other times that he's really stepped up to the plate, and other times, he's thrown critical interceptions and stuff, and I'm just not a full believer in Sam Darnold quite yet, first year in the offense and all that. I think the 49ers get it done. They somehow piece it together to make this another 23-19 game, or a low-scoring game where they can go down and score, and then their defense somehow steps up late. But, I mean, if the Seahawks win, I could see this game definitely going either way. This isn't a for sure.
No, I feel like this is a toss-up game because I said McDonald has said, like you said, very very rarely it's hard to come off a bye, so you have to know how to manage that on itself, as well as McDonald's first game as in this position. That being, and so like the edge obviously goes to Shanahan, and I said it's not very often that you get his offense twice, and I feel like I said going under the radar. And like I said, when they split the regular season series, they played week 1. The Niners won in Seattle already. Seattle's one of the hardest, loudest. I mean, they're tied for the Chiefs for the loudest stadium in the NFL. It's going to be loud. It's a divisional rival, and again, it's going to be a close game. But San Francisco's not afraid. They're familiar with Seattle and vice versa. And what cost the game the first time was Sam. And this is why 2 weeks ago I actually had picked the Niners, even though I've been on so high on the Seahawks this year, was because I'm with you. Like Sam Darnold has proven them more than capable. It's at times this year borderline MVP candidate, like good point guard, kind of like a Jared Goff kind of. Like I said, you look at the weapons because of all the injuries with the Niners, and you look, okay, well, Nelson Smith, the Jigba, is as good as any number one. And then you have Cooper Kupp, and you have Snead, and you got Kenneth Walker as a perennial Pro Bowler. And like the weapons, what they shut down the Niners 2 weeks ago, like on defense, like they get pressure as good as the Texans, like sacks, takeaways, like the total defense, time of possession, what they do on defense. But all that being said, it's like I just feel like I said I worry. My one worry about this game is still, Sam Darnold showed that he'll still make those boneheaded plays. I feel like he's obviously a lot better situation, a lot smarter, and like I said, in a lot better situation in the last 2 years. He's proven in 2 different systems that he's a lot better than when he was with the Jets. That he wasn't a bust. That he is a good quarterback with the Seahawks this year and with the Vikings last year. That being said, I'm still worried that'll be the difference in the game is like not having that big turnover. That's what cost them against the Niners the first time. That's what cost them earlier the first game against the Rams. So it's like this is a game where I just feel like even if the Seahawks win, like Kyle Shanahan's totally comfortable in this setting. Like okay, like so. But I am going to go with the Seahawks just because of getting them a couple weeks ago and the balance they have on both sides of the ball. But like you said, same thing. I'm not trying to take the cop out. I'm not going to be surprised if the Niners win because of how well they played other than that Seattle game and the moxie and momentum they showed last week and the moxie that Brock Purdy has, underdog, the fight that they have, again, divisional opponent. But I'm going with the Seahawks. I like the guys. I said there's a certain times where the balance, like with Smith and the Jigba, the running game and the passing game and playing at home and that defense and being in a close game, I feel like Seattle's going to – I feel like they're going to take care of business. Right now, Seattle, for what it's worth, not that neither one of us are going off of that, but Seattle is the favorite right now in Vegas to win the Super Bowl. So,
boo. Takes us into Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock. This is an ESPN, ABC game. This is the Red Hot Texans that we talked about for the last couple months, it seems like. Rolling into New England playing the Patriots.
Yeah.
Who just came in and just put the smackdown on the Chargers. So
yeah, it was interesting to see how this game would go. Both the playoff games for both of these teams were blowouts at 30-6. And what was the Texans score? The Texans won by a lot as well. They cut them to 3 points. So I'm interested to see how this one shakes out for sure. And it's another game that I don't have written down yet. I'm still back and forth on it. Just because, the Patriots have been good, but also there is the caveat of who have they played besides the Bills twice, who have they played that's really pushed them and tested them. And that Texans defense has been lights out. And I think for that reason, I'm going to go with the Texans purely off of defense and the edge rushers. I mean, those guys have just been getting after it. And as good as Drake May's been this year, Stephon Diggs, was wide receiver 1. Obviously, they had whoever it was last week, the guy's revitalizing his career. So, I mean, we don't have any big weapons. And, it's year 1 of the program. And as much as I want to see the Patriots, win this game because of Mike Vrabel, I think the Texans get it done just purely off of defensive edge rush. And that secondary is lights out. And there's that pieces. And I think C.J. Stroud, obviously C.J. Stroud's a playoff winning quarterback. He won this year, but he's won before. And he got knocked out by the Chiefs his rookie year, and that game was even close in that game as well. So I think Stroud is the veteran. Obviously, he's the veteran, but he's the more experienced guy here. He's been here. He's going to make the smart throws, knowing his defense has his back. So I think the Texans get it done. I think the Patriots give them a good run, though, and I think I don't know. It's going to get loud for the Patriots this offseason if you didn't play anybody, so you're not a real team. But I think that's perfect for Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel likes – I think not that he needs it, but I think my variable ticks off of people telling him that he can't do it, and then obviously he goes and does what he's done this year with them, and it kind of seems like the mantra of the whole team is, just beating. Everybody hates us, and we're gonna or not hates us, but everybody doubts us, and we're gonna go prove them wrong.
Yeah. No, two defensive players that had successful NFL careers as linebackers for both of them, who are now head coaches and more defensive-minded coaches. On the one hand, the one way I see the Patriots winning this game is if C.J. Stroud turns the ball over. He's been the biggest question mark, and I was a believer in him coming out of college. So for as much as I like to be reserved on that most of the time, I saw enough of him winning a playoff game a couple years ago, but really inconsistent this year. Made a couple nice plays against Pittsburgh in the final game of the year. Against, I think it wasn't the Colts. Whatever their last game was before that. But I can see it if they turn the ball over in Foxborough or the game's really close. I can see Drake May playing at an MVP level that he played this year, and them coming up with the scheme it just plays in the wheelhouse of the Patriots. I can see the Patriots win. But like I said, a lot of this has nothing to do with even just fandom at this point. But just I'm going to go with the Texans as well, just because I picked against them twice over the last 2.5 months, and I paid for it both times. But winners are 13 out of 15, and I'm with you. It's this Texans defense has, as long as Stroud doesn't turn the ball over, and again, I'm nervous to say this because the Patriots have been one of the most complete teams in the NFL all year on both sides of the ball, whereas Houston, you never know what you're going to get. But I just feel watching the Texans against the Jaguars and shutting down Trevor Lawrence and that offense, having 8 sacks against the Bills and shutting it wasn't just that they shut him out. It was just anytime that somebody even made a play, or that it was just first play of the first series yesterday of both the first half and the second half. Or when it was 10-6, obviously when the game's so close with 11 minutes left and they get a pick six. When it came down to shut the door on a game, it was Patrick Mahomes when Patrick Mahomes was still healthy and they played the Texans. When it came down, okay, now Patrick Mahomes got the ball. What are they going to do? It was 3 and out. And all they did was go backwards. This defense is that good. They played better offenses. They shut down Herbert. They shut down Mahomes. They shut down everybody they play this year. And I just feel that, like you said, Stephon Diggs is in my opinion, even in his prime as a Pro Bowler, was isn't a true number one, dare I say, or he's good, but who else are they going to throw to? So if they don't turn the ball over, another thing that New England typically does really well, like Pittsburgh, is the yards after the catch. And you saw yesterday, and you've seen all year with Houston, you may get the catch, but it's going to be contested. It's going to be, every first down. Again, it's us. I'm sorry, but it seemed like every first down we had, it was just kind of like the Bills game in that it was make 2 or 3 guys miss. He breaks out of a sack, finds a guy in the flat. The guy dives for a first down and gets it by a half a yard. They make you earn every single thing with Houston. And I don't know who for New England. Same thing. They don't have a juggernaut offense, so I think they'll take away Diggs. They'll get pressure on New England, and I'm going with Houston. I feel I hope that they figured out a formula as far as, especially if they're not going to have a choice if Collins is gone. To just run straight north and south. Just run the football, smash mouth football, and get turnovers. Play the short field. I'm going with the Texans just because that's who I'm rooting for, and I've been so high on their defense, and I just
high on their D.
Yeah, which would be crazy because so far on my picks I've got Houston and Buffalo, and all three of us have referenced that game that was a Thursday night game, which nobody was paying attention to at the time. I said. And again, I hope I'm wrong for your Broncos' sake. I said, but either way, if the Texans win, when the Texans were beating the Broncos for 3.5 quarters, and then they won. I think the Broncos won 18-16.
Yeah, they kicked a last-second field goal.
But I said either one of those games could be looking at an AFC Championship preview. So
true that.
I'm a believer, obviously, in the Texans' defense, and I'd like them to shut down and make enough plays against New England.
Which takes us to our last divisional round game. That's 5:30 on NBC. We have the Rams playing in Chicago against the Bears.
The Bears.
That's your pick, huh? Well, let me fill that in.
I wanted to pick the Bears. Every ounce of my emotional rationale was we're picking the Bears. The Bears are going to win. And then, you go back, you watch the tape, you're like, oh, crap. The Seahawks are not the Seahawks. The Rams are definitely the better team. and I'm not a. I've talked about it. I talked about it earlier. I'm not 100% confident in Caleb Williams not to make the big mistakes. And the Rams defense has been very opportunistic this year. And, those plays when Caleb Williams is rolling out of the pocket, throwing back across his body, which as an NFL quarterback is number one sin. You're not supposed to do it. Caleb Williams has gotten lucky and, made those plays this year. But the Rams defense has been a team that you can't do that against. And I think Caleb Williams is going to get too much pressure. I don't know if the moment's too big for him. But I'm not a true believer in Caleb Williams, and Matthew Stafford's been here, done that. He's consistent. The moment will not be too big for Matthew Stafford. It hasn't been proven to been since he was in Detroit. The whole time he's been with the Rams, the moment's never been too big for him. He's always stepped up to the plate and played the best version of his football. And, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams will only get better just coming off an injury. And, a couple penalties last week, he's only going to improve. So I think the Rams get it done. The Bears have been fun to watch this year. I've truly enjoyed watching them and watching how they've, surprised a lot of people and ended up winning the NFC North and all that stuff. So Bears will be back next year, but I think Caleb Williams is just a little too inconsistent to be able to hang with Matt Stafford in that offense, and then that Rams defense is just very opportunistic, and Caleb Williams makes too many boneheaded plays or too many bad decisions. I think the Rams will make him pay enough to get it done. So
yeah, I can see this game also going. I'm not trying to take the cop out of it, but I can see this game go either way. I feel like it's going to be a close game. Chicago is going to be coming out on fire and great sports city. They haven't been here in a while, and I think that Caleb Williams makes some big plays, keeps it close, plays a better even first half. And like I said, for as good as the Rams defense is, there's been several times, the Panthers both times, where the teams have put up 30 points. They've given up some big plays. And so I feel like there's going to be some plays to be made for Chicago on top of the kind of season they had. And they've, I'll be honest, I didn't think that they had it in them. But the way they competed, even in the loss to San Francisco, and then the way they beat the Eagles early in the year, obviously they beat the Packers too and some other teams. But I'm saying I think they'll keep it. I think they'll keep it close. But like I said, at the end of the day, I feel like, as cliche as it sounds, some coaches outsmart themselves. I said, but when the game's on the line, you get the ball to your best playmakers, and I feel like Matthew Stafford, like you said, at the end of that, especially that last drive, the mix between Puka and Devontae Adams, it was surgical. And so I feel like with Stafford being one of those vet guys, as being in every situation, and really playing for what is he going to come back? I haven't heard any reports of him not coming back, but is he going to come back because of his age? On top of, I still argue, I've always really liked Matthew Stafford. His toughness, the natural arm talent. He's probably got a top 10 natural arm throwing motion of all time, and just had that losing record for some years because he was on a bad organization. I like Matt Stafford. But if you ask me right now, I personally would not have him in the Hall of Fame. So to me, if you get that second ring, that's what he's playing for in the latter half of his career. And to go out with a bang and to really cement himself, I think it's already been proven that was a lot to do with Chicago. But unfortunately, that's just the draw. You know what I mean? Like I said, that may be the truth, and he might be good enough. I said, but just off that one season, and he's had other good statistical seasons. But I'm just saying, one Super Bowl, and then you didn't up until this year. Up until this year, Matthew Stafford, this was the first time that he had a 500 record or had a career record, which is crazy. Because I know he's better than that. But to me, I'm so for that reason, I said, I just feel like, again, Puka Nacua is 1A, 1B. He's as good as anybody in the NFL, and I feel like they make enough plays. I feel like Chicago they play a better half. They keep it closer than what they do against Green Bay. And the storybook season they played, I feel like they'll put up some fight, enough offensive weapons. Plus, obviously, again, the offensive minds, again, we were 19 weeks through the NFL season. I still couldn't tell you the offensive coordinator. I'm sorry, I should research that. Well, the coordinator of the Bears are, but when your running back coach is Eric Bieniemy, the offensive minds, I feel like will have a good game plan, and there's big plays to be made. Rams have an outstanding defense, but again, they've given up some big plays. But I feel like Chicago can make we'll keep it close, but in the end, it's going to be, I think, like I said, Matthew Stafford. Similar to last week, with the game on the line. I feel like I'm gonna go with the Rams. I think it's gonna be an all NFC West, NFC title game. We've been all over them all year, from the get go, having three teams in the playoffs. And like I said, when the Rams Seahawks played last month, that looked like it was going to be the 1 seed, and then it came down to the last game of the year with the Niners and Seahawks for the 1 seed. But I'm just like, I mean, to me, those are the 3 best teams in the entire NFC, or the 3 NFC West teams, 1, 2, and 3. So, yeah, give me the Rams.
So yeah, that concludes it. We both picked Indiana to win the Natty. Not really too much weird to kind of hit on that.
Yeah.
Just wrote that down so then we go back like next year and look and see what it looked like. But yeah, Finn, you got some picks here for the playoffs you want to throw out there?
What you got for the 4 games, buddy? Okay, so again, the first game.
Bills, Broncos. I'm going to go Broncos just because, actually,
Because
Bills.
T-Bone's healthy.
Bills because Josh Allen doesn't have Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and all those other people in the playoffs. So, like, it's really their chance. And, like, Josh Allen, he's gonna get those big plays. But the Broncos, good defense, gonna get some stops. And Josh Allen is just, at the end of the game, Josh Allen's definitely better, and I'd just say it comes down to the end of that game. And Josh Allen.
What about the other number 1 seed in the NFC? What do you have for the round 3? They went 1-1 against each other between the Niners and Seahawks in Seattle. Who you got?
I'm going to go Seahawks because Sam Darnold, he's really showed how he's improved since New York, because during his time with the Vikings, like, he really showed how he can go out there and make them plays. But then at the same time, their defense is good, and he has the offensive weapons on the Seahawks. And 49ers, they got a lot of players hurt. And Seahawks.
The Niners, for what it's worth, the Niners didn't do a whole lot 2 weeks ago against the Seahawks, but I think it's going to be a different game. But what you got for the Texans Patriots?
I'm going to go Texans just because I'm going to take, because, like, their defense has gotten big stops, and that showed last week against the Steelers. Like, they got those stops, and they got those big defensive plays that led to them scoring and putting up those numbers. And offense, it's not that good. Like, if they can get a good offense and their defense is good, then I definitely say they come out with a win. It's the Patriots. If the Texans, just depends on how the Texans play.
Well, to add on to your point, I want to say is, like, Pittsburgh did this for years. Tom Brady did this for years. I feel like the second Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes, I said, but, like, he didn't have a lot of offensive weapons like the Texans. But to me, it's like your defense is so good. Chiefs, Steelers, like, you talk about those other teams, it's like you don't need to have the Peyton Manning offense to put up 38 points a game. If you put up 20 points most weeks, you're probably going to win. So it's a race to 20 in my mind. If your offense, the Ravens and that Ray Lewis defense, I said how they went on their playoff run when Ray Lewis won his first Super Bowl in 2000 with Trent Dilfer. That's exactly how they got. They would start off red hot, and they scored enough points early, and then they just let their defense go the rest of the game. So I feel like that's the formula for the Texans. It's like you were talking. I just want to made me think of that when you're talking about the offense. It's just like it's not about the fact that they don't have the offensive firepower even that Seattle or a lot of these other teams have, but like it's with that defense, it might be you score 20 points, make enough plays. That's enough to to win you most games. And then last game, Rams at Chicago.
I'm gonna go the Rams just because their offense, they got Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams coming back, and Matthew Stafford going MVP candidate type stuff. And the Bears, Caleb Williams throwing his, turnovers. I think the Rams are going to get a couple turnovers and lead to their offense, and their offense is just, that showed this year that they're really good. They got those weapons. And
So you're all the same for us, man.
Be on the lookout for State of the Teams. Twitch is obviously going to have a good Steelers take coming up with the Tomlin resigning. And then I will preview the Broncos-Bills game on there too. Appreciate everybody listening. Hope everybody has a great divisional round. Stay safe. Hope everybody has a great weekend as is, and we'll catch you guys next week.